You know, it's the concept of being like compassionate and loving is kind of a rough one when you see it from like the global aerial view, if that makes any sense. That's the best way I could describe it, which is probably a horrible way to describe it. But the reason why I say it like that is this, is we often think to be compassionate towards somebody or be gentle means giving them only good news, only things that they want to hear, allowing emotions they only want to feel. But that's actually more sensual and demonic, I guess, if you would. Because when we're sitting there massaging one's emotions so that they can feel good about their situation, their plight, we're allowing them to live in carnality, in the flesh, instead of calling them into the spirit where they're supposed to live. And I think the reason why we do that, I remember this conversation I had with a pastor a couple of years ago. And there are times where you have to, we were talking about people just kind of going through hard things, hard situations. And when we really look at why we are helping someone, sometimes it's because we are uncomfortable about their situation. Their situation makes us feel uneasy because we don't want to watch them struggle. And while this isn't the greatest example of somebody having to struggle through something and then it actually coming to serve them better, I had a very abusive stepfather when I was growing up. Well, at very early stage of my life. To the extent, like, and I just telling you this so that you get an idea of his nature. And I'm sure, I hope he's not the same today if he's still alive. But like, my mom would come home and locks of my hair would be in his hand. So he was not afraid to be rough, I guess, if you would. But I remember him throwing me into the swimming pool where we lived and being told, you can swim or you can drown. Those were my options. I was not able to phone a friend. No one was there to, comfort me. And I was panicking. You bet your bottom dollar I was panicking. Now, I can't really recall me getting into a pool too soon after that. But I do remember randomly at one point just jumping in the pool and swimming. I can't remember anything from between the moment where I was given the option that I can either swim or I can drown, and the next time I went swimming. And I remember having, like, my mom And whoever else was there, like, oh my, he can swim. See, that moment of swim or drown taught me to swim. Later became incredibly helpful, as at one point, while my younger brother was still in his like toddler stage, and he's in one of those toddler floaty things that parents from the 80s put their kids in, or 90s I guess I would say, in the pool. And my brother's always been this one to, if there was a way to do it, he would find it. And he found a way to turn that thing upside down while he was still in it. And so, of course, everyone freaks out. And that's when me, being a kid that was told to swim or drown, was able to beat everyone to him and get him turned right side up. I became a strong swimmer. See, sometimes I don't necessarily suggest telling people to swim or drown, because that's, again, that was abuse. But sometimes we avoid having the hard conversation because we'll have to watch someone walk through something hard. And that is uncomfortable for us. And that's what me and this pastor were talking about, is there were some people in the midst of our community that were going through hard things. And we really wanted to help them. But we really knew it was the Lord for them to walk through these hard things so that they could find Him. Jesus tells us that the hard road leads to life. Well, Jesus is the way, the truth, and the life. The hard road leads to Jesus. Even Scripture says that He learned obedience through His sufferings. He being Jesus. And so when Jesus had to endure, He learned about submission to God. And when we go through hard things, it brings us to a place of surrender. Because obedience is nothing but an acronym for surrender. Not acronym, synonym. Wow. Judge me on that one, please. But surrender is a synonym for obedience when it comes to following the Lord. And so when we go through hard things, when we go through trials, when we go through the rough battle, it allows us to find Jesus. It allows us to find life. It doesn't feel like it at the time. It doesn't feel like people love us at the time. But sometimes we don't know what's going on behind the scenes, and they're praying, and it was very challenging. And I've been on both sides of that coin. I've been the one that's had to watch someone walk through hard things, and I've had to be the one that's walked through hard things. And I can tell you, as someone who's walked through hard things, the challenges, sometimes they bring out the worst in you. I can tell you that. I know that for sure. Challenges have brought out the worst in me, the things that I didn't know that existed. And it becomes like a plumb line, and it causes all the stuff to float to the top. But I'll tell you what, nothing makes a garden grow like manure, and we all got it. We all got some manure in our lives, but nothing makes that garden grow like some good old ripe manure. And so maybe you're walking through a hard time. Maybe you're walking through a challenge right now, and you're just like, I don't know what to do. It's like no one's here to help me. But that might be by design of God. Think about when Jesus sat with the woman at the well, and she was like, I have no husband. And Jesus is like, you've had 5, and the one you're with now is still not your husband. But he wasn't saying it like, you have the spirit of whoredom. The actual spirit in the Bible. We never talk about it very much. But there's the spirit in the Bible called the spirit of whoredom. But Jesus wasn't telling the woman at the well that she had a spirit of whoredom. He was saying, listen, I know you've had a rough life. I know where you're at right now is not where you're trying to be. So why don't you get right? No different than with the woman caught in the act of adultery. You're not living like you're supposed to. Come on. Let's do this. You're a daughter. You're a daughter of the Most High God. Let's get you up out of the dirt. So sometimes being honest with somebody, while it may be painful, is actually the most loving thing you can do. Having a hard conversation might be the most loving thing you can do. Allowing someone to go through their process might be the most loving thing you can do. Because the hard road leads to life. And it's up to that individual for them to choose God. You cannot make someone choose God no matter how hard you try. This whole concept of we must show them Jesus, while full of good intentions, it's relatively manipulative at its core. Because it is with the intent of trying to coerce somebody to choose God. But that is the decision in which a person needs to make on their own accord without their arm being twisted, with pure intentions, so that they can say they've done it with faith. Because it's faith comes by hearing, and hearing by the word of the Lord. And if somebody doesn't establish their own faith by hearing God in the midst of their darkness, nothing you can do will connect that for them. They have to have the experiential revelation of who God is. Just like just like Peter with Jesus, when he said, "Who do you say that I am?" And he says, "You are the Christ." We must allow those people in our lives to have the revelation that he is the Christ.